Hello viewers, welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable once again. Today our topic is one that is a continuous conversation, and I'll just give a brief preamble. A country that came to global prominence under its leader, Chairman Mao Zedong, particularly because of its views on communism, basically. However, so many years down the road, this country finds itself finding a compromise between capitalism and its inherent views about how a state needs to be run. And today it is largely participating in the capitalism and the global economic market. And of course the question here is on China, that in the past couple of days there was a China-Africa summit in China, but also in the past we have seen multiple countries convening African leaders in their capitals, where we have never seen any African country hosting global leaders on economic principles and discussions. Well, we shall talk about that and much more on this episode of the show. And of course, I now introduce to you our panelists, and in no particular order. A student and a former guild president, and also a political scientist, Male Collins. And then Male, we are pleased to have you.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel? It's the first time on the show.
Yeah, it is really interesting, but most importantly, since we are here to discuss affairs of Africa, I am very glad and happy to be here.
All right, next to myself is the second gentleman on the show, and the name is Kule Expedito, who is from the African UN Youth Fellow. Kule, it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Kidega. It's a bright morning, and I'm so glad to be here discussing matters of national and international benefit. So I'm glad to be here and hoping for the best deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our hope as well. The last but not least on the show is the only lady, and that is Blessing Mugisha. Blessing is a trade facilitation lawyer. Blessing, we are pleased to have you.
Thank you for having me on the show. Good morning, everyone, and I'm very, very excited about the topic today. I'm very, very excited about it because I would also want to see where Uganda participates in this summit and everything. Yes.
Interesting. So I think let me just begin with you actually right away. I don't know, what do you make of, yes, the China-Africa summit, but I think in the past there have been multiple of the same. What is the hidden agenda, or it is all put on the table?
What I think in general is that all different countries, what we call the superpowers, are targeting Africa. And rightly so, because Africa has a component that most of the continents do not have. It has minerals, it has a lot of idle land, it has opportunity of growth, it has resources that other continents do not have. So everyone should come to Africa, and everyone is rightly doing so. But specifically for China, I think China has been one of the biggest partners for Africa in the previous past. When you look at things that they've been doing, specifically if you look at trade in itself, the bilateral trade, I think China is the largest bilateral trading partner for Africa. We export quite a lot of things, but we also import very many things. When you look at infrastructure development in many countries, not just Uganda, you look at Kenya, you look at Ethiopia, Angola. Angola, of course, they were targeting their oil. Yes, but there is a lot of infrastructure development because China has a skill. It has a different skill compared to actually all the different other continents, and they are investing in Africa. And it's not that they're giving us goodwill, but they know that eventually they will benefit from these infrastructures because it's a give and take. We give you infrastructures, you pay us, we're employing our resources, and we're also getting resources from African countries. Maybe I can give a very good example of the most recent, and I think that's something that will come on the table. China has ceased to give us, to even hold summits in their own countries. China is now coming to us. It's a few years back came to Kenya and planted seed. Now the planting seed that they put there for their infrastructure and the businesses that they are running in Kenya are out competing most of the importers, the local importers in Kenya.
Are they being run by Kenyans or they're being run by Chinese?
No. They're being run by Chinese. Of course, they give manual labor to Kenyans. Chinese, they are very minimal on payment. So the manual labor is given to Kenyans and other African countries. Even in Uganda here, when you go to Chinatown, you will notice that maybe the tailors, the cashiers, all those are Ugandans.
But is that a reason for us to jubilate?
No.
Because they're getting those like what is the disproportionality in terms of what they're getting vis-a-vis what we are getting as a people?
Now, when I will give a very good example of Uganda in itself. Uganda has imports. Most of the people that are in businesses actually do importation. When you go to places like Chikubo, places like there's a lot of importation that has been happening, and of course there's a lot of taxation that has happened, so the prices of goods have gone high. You cannot buy something in Chikubo. For example, if you want to buy a bottle of wine that has been imported, you will notice that originally it was 15,000, now it is like 60,000, which is very, very high. Now, why we shouldn't jubilate about this is that the Chinese that are coming to Uganda have a high investment. They have a lot of money, so they can import as many containers as possible. And of course, if they come as investors in itself, they have a tax holiday of 5 years. That means that their competition with the local people that are importing is imbalanced. People, I think you must have seen lines of people lining up to go to Chinatown. Why? Because some of their commodities are cheap. Why would you think that they're cheap? Because for them, they're importing in large quantities. So there, of course, the cost implication of importation on shipment is also very low. And when you also look at the holidays that they're being given, it means in 5 years' time now, Chinatown is going to compete unreasonably with the other importers that are local people. So even if they're giving small jobs to Ugandans, the bigger picture is what is the percentage of our business people who are in importation who are being outcompeted by these Chinese. They're giving them exactly the same things that we sell. I had conversations of people and they were saying that, their quality is bad for Chinatown. That's a lie. They all import from China. China produces for 2 markets in the world. It produces for Europe, it produces for Africa. So whatever Chikuba people are getting from China is what Chinatown is bringing. Just that it's bringing it cheaply and selling it cheaply. So it's going to outcompete. People are making losses. There's a lot of taxation happening down there. There's a lot that their products are now redundant. No one is buying from them because Chinatown has produced something that is cheap. So they will employ 50 people, 50 Ugandans, but they are causing unemployment to more than 2,000 people that are in Chikubo on the value chain. Because Chikubo has a value chain, it has those importers, there are people that buy from them, there are retailers, there are wholesalers. That's a full value chain that cannot compete with someone who's doing direct sales. Someone made a joke about retailing and wholesaling and said, all we have to do is just go buy from Chinatown and come and restock. Restock here. Because that is the easiest way to do it. It's going to cause so many people to lose revenue. It's causing very many people to lose employment. But largely, because government has given this a holiday, and they cannot tax when people are not making profit. Taxing cannot be done on expense. It has to be done on profit. So if I'm not making a lot of profit from the imported goods that I have, the only taxation you're going to do is on shipment. So if I'm not selling, I can't give you money as government. So it's not a good thing. Of course, we are looking at it in the short run, that every Ghana now can afford a charger, can afford... Someone said the TV is 300, which is a lie. Of course, the simple, small things are the ones that are cheap. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the long term. What's the impact of the trade? Of the trade that they're introducing to the African countries.
Wow, fantastic preamble right there. Kule, let me get to you. And Blessing talks about so many things, but I want to point out the aspect of importation, right? Is that if Africa, or if Uganda in this case, is going to be able to compete and be able to negotiate as an equal partner with those superpowers is that it must begin to do certain things on its own. It must begin to finance its own development. It must begin to scale up multiple industrialization and production. So where Africa is now as it stands, what is our capacity to get to a point where we are saying we can limit what we import from China, what we import from the USA, because we can produce them now locally here?
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Kidega. My response towards that is I will start with us, the people. Just first changing our mindset. Given that we really need to centralize these things towards ourselves in the production, in giving them out, and in ensuring that our business is stable. Looking at the economy currently, you may fail to understand whether China is producing within the country, whether China is importing also, or it is just branded with importing from their home country to Uganda, given the prices that are set for what? For the products that they're selling like at Chinatown there, in town there. But now, in the long run, they are going to affect us. Most of the people are so proud of this, and I can say it is for the Kampala people, because it is only the China store is set in Kampala. I've not had most or other places where it is set, but where does it leave the local person in Kasese? Where does it leave the local person in Soroti, Gulu? Where? So how really are we going to balance this? So what we should first look at is the mindset. Let people not people in Kampala do celebrate much more upon this, because it even affects the economy, the entire economy, not only for the people within or within Kampala or outside Kampala, but generally the whole of Uganda. So on issues concerning about trade, you may also ask yourself with the tariffs that are really being impeded on these commodities being imported, are they tax exempted? Are they tax free? Don't they pay taxes? So how comes all this happen? And I think I am not branding it, but I think I'll just say it is just a political matter in this very situation. Yeah, that is what I can talk about this very issue.
Yeah, just because you mentioned something that is critical, and that is whether we have capacity to produce internally, and whether these Chinese are actually doing the production within the country or they're just merely importing. I think China has gone to the extent of establishing industrial parks. There is one in Nakaseke, is it called Liangshan? Something like that. They're now bringing these industrial parks within our country and producing from within. But like Blessing said, they are producing, but the cost of production is very, very low. So it means that even when they eventually have that product on the market, it is way cheaper than if it was produced by an ordinary Ugandan person, all right? Because for them, I mean, with all these tax exemptions, but also China as a country gives credit at almost 0% interest to its people. So they have access to credit, then they're coming here and they're getting all these, very conducive environment. I mean, they are going to outcompete anyone domestically. So just in terms of policy, do you think the government is putting in place the right policies?
I think the government is not doing it all that well, given that, I understand there is a liberty, but it has also a way how it can affect other people. Let your freedom or let your liberty not affect other people's freedom. Given that we see that, yes, they're all in business, but their business is moving extra, I think I should say extraordinary? Yeah. Because given that their prices are very cheaper compared to other market vendors. There's so many people who are selling the same commodities, let's say the Ugandans, but their prices are quite higher than these ones, and therefore there is no legitimacy in this. You just look at it being favoring one side, but leaving other people not benefiting, because these people, the people within the Chikubo, they are going to close shops. They're going to close. And who is going there? Because if they're telling you that a TV is at 20,000 or 200,000, maybe depending on the type you need, at China, maybe China stores. Why would you go to Chikubo to look for a TV? Why would you go to Chikubo to look for something that is 500, yet there is that for 200? That's how she said. That these are the same things that we are buying. They shouldn't lie up that the quality, what all of us, most of the things, electronic gadgets, we are importing them from China. And then when they have brought them nearer to you at the very least price, why would you go for the other one that is higher than? Please, definitely you have to go for China store and you get what you want. So it is going to affect our local population. And
but you know, government as the biggest regulator, like, is the government seeing these things? Like, to me, that's the question. I don't know.
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Before I come to you.
Yes, I'd like to say something really regarding government being a regulator. One thing that we have to appreciate is the type of the economy we're in. A liberalized economy cannot necessarily, the government can do so little on a liberalized economy. It means that the rule of demand and supply determines so many things, so many things. The market supply, the distribution, the engagement. It is okay for me if I feel like I'm making profit on my TV to sell it at 200,000. The government cannot come and say, no, now you can't sell because you can't. What the government needed to do is because what the incentives that they're giving these people, if they are not replicating it to their own people, then the competition will not be equal. You get so. This is it. When you are importing particular goods, of course, there are taxes that are levied, high taxes that are levied on goods that are imported, other than the waivers that have been put on, like machinery for agriculture and tourism. Some of those that the government has highlighted and said they are going to give them incentives on any importations that they do. But remember, people that are doing general trading are probably importing things that do not have waivers, that do not have any incentives, that do not have anything. So at the end of the day, if I put a tax on 30% on importation, and shipment already has a cost, there's insurance, there's a lot of cost that is involved in importation. By the time I arrive and want to sell my commodity, I will have to include all those expenses that I've incurred and also include my profit that I want to make. So it doesn't, in fact, people in Chikubo do not sell things expensively. They are getting a very small percentage on profit, but it's because there's a lot of expenses that they're already incurring. Now, someone might say that these Chinese are also importing the same things. So why do they have incentives? Why do they have tax holidays? Some of them do not actually have those incentives. The most important thing is identifying that Chinese pre-planned their importation. First of all, their affordable financing that they get. As a Chinese, I want to get money, they give me a free interest loan. That means that for me, if I am paying a loan of 30% per annum as an importer, that's already a cost that a Chinese is not incurring. Number two is in line with general expenses that Chinese have. For example, Chinese have a one-child policy. In Uganda, we are producing 12 children. I'm already incurring so much money. So Chinese families have actually accrued their money through lack of expenses, general expenses that the Ugandans are also, already incurring. Number three is that if I am saying that I am bringing in a particular investment worth this amount of money, because some of these Chinese, the way they bring in their products is through the industrial parks. You've just talked about the one in Kapeka that does shoes. I can import my goods through that industry. No one is going to say, no, this is not what, because it all comes in the name of that industrial park. When I reach here, it has not been taxed, it has incentives, it has 5 days holiday, and I put it in Chinatown. How would you know that I've put it in Chinatown? The ground is not balanced at all, and of course the government has come out and said we need money. These taxes are supposed to build roads, build schools, build what? In fact, every day there's a new tax that is being introduced on imports. While they are thinking that they are doing domestic substitution, But at the end of the day, they're impacting very many people because those people that are importing do not have the capacity to produce. Domestically. Yes, so
Wow.
maybe you can just continue this conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And to bring in Collins, he has been quiet for a bit. Collins, I don't know, we seem to be, because it's like we expect the Chinese as a country to some sort of do us a favor. I think there is a writer on global cooperation. I think it's called Kenneth Waltz. He said that the world is a self-help system. Like every country is there to get what they can get. So Uganda to expect that the Chinese are going to somehow do trade in a way that favors us and not them is us being naive. So the question then is, how prepared is Africa, or in this case Uganda, in terms of institutions, in terms of maybe or whatever framework it is that you might require? How prepared are we to regulate more so the negative impacts of such trade arrangements?
Yes, thank you so much. To me, the cooperation that African states have with China is more of trying to understand a scenario where my parent says, you are doing this course. If you want to do the course that you want,
pay for yourself.
You pay for yourself. So if African states, we are looking at developing our institutions, especially towards economic development, who is the best partner?
Ourselves.
So now, if African states think that China is the best partner, what is then the problem that we think that China is the best partner? And you and I will agree that the problem of African states is consumption. It is we that want cheap things. It is we that we want regulated strings attached. Because when you choose to go for a loan in the US,
you don't set the conditions.
Yes, so you don't set the conditions. So even when China sets a little bit of a few conditions, but when you are going to go to the US, they will obviously attach some democratic conditions. You have to do this, you have to do this. And to me, I think that Africans, it's time to wake up. First of all, to first understand our problem. So our problem in Africa is specifically consumption. So if our problem is consumption, then what do we need to do?
Okay, you see, just to juxtapose a similar question, is that because you're asking us what the problem is, and in 2018, African states launched the African Continental Free Trade Area, all right, to sort of salvage that problem, that consumption. You have a country producing milk, let us remove the tariffs and allow as much trade as possible within ourselves.
Yes. So
is us going to look for partners even outside the continent? Is it an indictment on policies like the AFTA, I don't know, SCTF?
Yes. Obviously, because if somebody in Chilhura wants to take their maybe milk, maybe their matoke to Kenya, they have to use a load.
Yes.
So at the end of it all,
infrastructure is important.
Is very, very important. So if you have to have a skills development center in Kasese, you'll possibly need to have maybe internet. So what comes in? Technology.
Yeah.
Which is the cheapest way of getting technology? Who is the best partner in that? China. You understand that? So I think, to me, it is if Africans, we need to sort out some of these issues, especially when we are talking about the problem of consumption. We need to come back to what sustainable development do we need as Africans. Secondly,
okay, sorry, I keep on getting these questions, but you see, does Africa have to move at the same pace with the rest of the world?
Why not?
No, I think we can move at our own pace. Because now, these guys are telling us that now we are in an era of, say, civilization. We are in an era of, technology. But if we are to allow ourselves to grow at our own pace, then we will not find ourselves trying to be at the same level with countries that have been there and doing these things for a long period of time. Do you think maybe we need to go back and say, okay, they gave us the structure adjustment programs, but maybe we were not ready at that time. And we begin to say, okay, can we first take 2 steps backwards and have a sort of, I don't know, retrospective view of this. But we are going with the bandwagon of, okay, now jump on this wagon. We all jump and go on it. Okay, jump on this, we all go on it.
You see?
And maybe at times we are not ready and we need to allow ourselves to grow organically.
I think it is not that we are not ready. For example, Mr. Jing says, I am going to give you $50 billion. Should I believe that as African Union, we cannot afford to raise that?
Good question, yeah.
We can. Secondly, they say, because what they are trying to do when governments changed in Guinea and in Niger, they were very happy that they allowed them to stay doing the infrastructure. And what is it doing? It is taking away the oil, the minerals that we have. So I think the question that Africans need to answer is not the readiness, because we are already ready. We have the population. But our presidents or our leaders have, I think, that brings in the question of policy and the political will. Our leaders have chosen to blackmail the capacity that they have as the Africans, to understand that each one of these countries is coming in Africa to take away our things from minerals. So I think the question comes back to us as Africans, and we need to understand that it is not that we are backwards. We have the minerals, we have the human capital. So if we need to do partnership, for example with China, how do we bring in China and on what terms? Because we have seen them here in trying to actually export our fish. So our fish from Lake Victoria, they are helping us to export it. So European Union goes back and says, you know what, Africa, if you want to export your coffee to us, to our markets, these are the terms. But if at all our states, our presidents, our leaders are willing to say, okay, no, if we need agriculture to grow in Africa, this is the policy that we need to develop, because we have the market. So, for me, I think the cooperation that African states have with China is a good one. However, it must be on our own terms. For example,
that is impossible.
It is, I know it is impossible. For example,
you know how they say he who pays the piper calls the tunes. Like you cannot set those terms because you are not negotiating as equals.
Of course, we are not. I'm not saying.
And you see, and maybe I want to bring in blessing before I get back to you. Is that I don't know. I think that we need to, as Africa, we need to pause and first observe what is happening around us. But otherwise, the way we are moving, we are headed for tough times. Because look at, for example, the Ugandan oil that is being gotten out of the ground. The biggest partners in that project is Civic, a Chinese company. All right? Uganda is going to get less than, I think, 15% profit. No, less than 10% profit from what will be made out of that business and enterprise. But you see, the oil is getting out. That's why I'm saying that if we wait a little longer, when we have the capacity, we can get that oil out with 100% profit remaining here in the country. But because we want to move with the trend, we want to go with things as they come, we are now forcing ourselves to get oil at. So I don't know. Me again, I think we need to look at ourselves and just take one step back. I don't know.
Let me tell you something. When they were digging copper in Kasese, we thought it was a joke. Now it is no more. In Kasese, we don't have copper now. Simply because somebody came and they said, you know what, these are the terms, so let's take away the copper. Now it is done. So in this era, if we are looking at sustainable development, it doesn't need us to stop. It only needs us to take steps on our terms as Africans.
Okay, fair enough. Blessing, just a question. I don't know, do these countries have to dictate how and when we develop? And what is development anyway?
Yeah, so countries that dictate how another country or another continent develops have what they call leverage. There's something that we do not have that particular continents have. And if we are to, I know you said we don't have to move with them, we can go back to old Stone Age and take our time. No, we can take our time, but we can't live in isolation in this world. There's so many things that are interdependent on each other, and which affect us as countries and also affect us as continents. There are particular things that we cannot. I'll give an example of Ethiopia. Ethiopia decided that it's a closed economy. People that have gone to work in Ethiopia, other than international organizations, struggle a lot because they pay you in their currency. For you to get even the dollar equivalent of that money is a problem. You get it on black market, and you lose a lot of money. That means that if you stepped in Ethiopia now, with its capacity of growth, it hosts the biggest organizations. If you go there, I know you know so many international organizations that are there, but their capacity to develop is not good because they're in an isolated space where they said, for us, we want our things for us and we want to develop on our pace. We don't want to move with the pace of the world. In the revolving world where each country depends on another country to do particular things, you cannot be seen to say, for us, we want to take a break and go back. We are moving as a team. You might not move on the same level. People who are seated here have different experiences, and the way they share and the way they communicate is totally different, but we're all talking about the same thing. Just like Africa and Uganda in particular, it wants development, it wants to reach a particular level, but on a different pace. We're already on a different pace. It's not that we're on their pace. We're already on a different pace. I wanted to highlight 3 things. I'm glad one of our speakers has talked about that we are ready. That's a very big statement. We are not ready. There's no way.
You're not ready.
Africa is ready. So readiness comes in particular component. Number 1, it comes in component of finance. How much money do you have? How many African countries are now in debt? Money that they borrowed and they have failed to pay it. How many?
The entire continent.
Look at Uganda. They are saying that our grandchildren will be paying our debt for 3 years back. Kenya is one of the countries that has borrowed the most from China, and it's in a deficit.
They've reached that debt ceiling.
Yes. Angola, they are trading their oil with the debt, and they have still failed to pay. Ethiopia in itself has borrowed from China, and China is holding them by the balls. Just know that when you do not have money, there's languages that you cannot communicate in. This is not barter trade. You are not doing barter trade that I give you my shirt, you give me my goat. No, you must have money to make locally.
Okay, but Blessing, just to be fair, because we don't lack money completely.
No, yes, it is.
But we are wasteful.
No.
We have wasteful governments.
Even that
spend money on all these things.
Even that money that we are wasting.
Frugal.
Even that money that we're wasting, it's borrowed money. It's not our money. Even that money that we are wasting, if, for example, today they said that MPs are getting 500 million as a thank you for supporting this bill, that is not our money. People say it's taxpayers' money, but the money that the taxpayers are contributing is towards a payment of a debt that we already have 10 years before now.
Okay.
That is not our money.
Okay, but do you know that URA has capacity to generate now this year 32 trillion Uganda shillings?
Do you know our debt? Do you know our debt?
The debt notwithstanding. I'm saying that it means there is money in the economy.
Of course.
Yeah?
I have done.
What is our national budget?
No, I've not said.
For next year, 72?
71
around there. But in the previous year, it was around 50 something. So if you can generate 32 2 trillion. Your budget is 52. It means if you cut off some of these wasteful expenditures, you know,
Obviously.
Yeah.
You
Can
see-
I finish, please?
Yes,
let
please.
me finish. Let me finish. That I'm not saying that Uganda does not have money. I've said that the money that the African countries have is not enough. Is not enough. And I agree with you when you say that let's take out the wasteful expenditure. It's not going to go away. This is a political state. Every political state has a wasteful expenditure because we use appeasement policy. If I do not appease my voters, they're not going to vote me. That is how politicians keep themselves in power, by using appeasement policy. And I know you know that so well. So money is not going anywhere. What I'm saying is that our money that we're supposed to use for trading is little. Is the money that we have, because we're already now paying debt. Now, when you're paying debt, there's an interest that accrues after a period of time. So if we were supposed to clear our debt maybe 5 years ago and we did not clear that debt, that means that money keeps an interest. So someone that demands you, if you go to someone who demands you money, they're still, of course, going to keep twisting and turning conditions and what. So we look like we are at the mercy of people that lend us money. Number 2 is in terms of the technical knowledge. Look at our curriculum right now. You have an engineer who cannot even give you paperwork of what they're supposed to construct, a road that they're supposed to construct. Chinese, Japanese, and other countries have intentionally developed their curriculum to make sure that someone who is 18 years is a professor. He's able to do a full map of a road that they're supposed to do, a structure that they're supposed to do. What happens is that when Chinese come in with their infrastructure, they come in with their own engineers, and they are not training our engineers. They say you are our supervisor. For them, they do the manual work. They make sure that the technical bit is being done by themselves. Now, that is not empowering the African countries. That is making sure that whatever they have, they take it back, so that you keep wanting them. In case there's a problem, you bring them back to make sure that they are doing all the work that they're doing. The resource is the third one. And someone said that what we need is consumption, that we don't have consumption or something. 52 of the African countries that signed the African Continental Free Trade Area provides billions of people that can consume our products. But what is the quality, what is the quantity, and what is the capacity to deliver? A very good example I want to give you is the East African community.
Yeah.
If our milk could not go to Kenya. What is the capacity saying that now for us African countries we are able to supply to other African countries?
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Later on,
We are doing protectionism policy because we want to protect our own people. But when China comes in with more money to invest in our businesses, in our countries, we give them a leverage.
Yeah.
So,
wow, Kule, just before we take a short commercial break, I have to pick it up from where Blessing has stopped. The issue of protectionism. And I have seen Europe, even up to date, they are still implementing protectionism policies. The EU, I think about 2 months ago, announced a policy that if your coffee or if any product is being produced from a deforestation area, it will not be worthy of import in their states. To me, that is a subtle way of implementing a protectionism policy. All right? So is Africa just being naive or not being, I don't know, as sophisticated as those on the other side? Because I think we can actually implement protectionism, but in a smart way. We don't have to, be heads on with it, but we can put in some regulations that protect the local producer, the Bidikos of today, the Mukwanos who are out there trying to. All these guys, we can protect them in some way. So do you think it is possible in this day and era?
Well, thank you. The issue of protectionism comes in a way that you have reached a level that you cannot afford yourself. And if you cannot afford yourself, definitely they have to put any burden on you to assist you. So if they have please, that is it. If you cannot be in position to act, oh yes, you have the coffee, so what are you going to use it? Definitely you want to import it to China. They will tell you, when you're importing it, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you need the money. Definitely you have to do it. So they have the authority. They have all the jurisdiction to give you whatever thing. And you have to kowtow, you have to follow them. Definitely, because you need the money. They have been, Madame Blessing has been talking about the issue of that Africa, I think we are not in that very ready to afford ourselves. And she has given some clear points, given that I want to first give you this issue of, you know, between a stone and an egg game, even if an egg hits the stone strongly, it's still the egg that gets affected. If at all China say, oh, if at all these European and Asian countries say, please, okay, Africa, you have said you are now in a position that you have developed yourselves. Okay, let us watch out, pay our debts, and we leave you. Which African country is going to survive? So you say that maybe we can be on our own, but it takes a very, very, very long process in bringing it to that. So,
but is it the bitter the bitter pill that we have to swallow now and say, okay, yes, it is hard, but for the future of the continent, for looking at 50, 100 years from now, would you rather take that decision hard as it is right now, or wait for it to get to a point where it is impossible? Because now we can still try and deal with it, but the longer we walk down this journey, we'll get to a point where it is impossible, where the country entirely is I don't know, property of the Chinese.
Okay, first of all, what we would have given in a percentage that, yeah, maybe in the long run, it can be achieved. We would have seen right away from the African Continental Free Trade Area. They had the summit, they sat and everything, they agreed everything on paper, but remained there. It remained there. You have seen the issue of maize flour going to South Sudan, you have seen the issues of maize going to Kenya. What is all that about? We would at least have sorted ourselves and followed the policies, the agreement that we had to reach upon in the African Continental Free Trade Area. If at least they would have been implemented fully, then we would say that we are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. But now...
So meaning even within ourselves,
please,
we are not...
We have failed ourselves, and how are we ready now to say that Africa, I think now we are good to go? They say, please, okay, you first by the... Look now, if countries like, I think, was it in 2018, where Zambia was almost being overpowered, China was almost having a country in Africa. Right away from the days of the 1970s when they were doing the Tazama Railway, that Tanzania-Zambia Railway. Up to now, these people are still paying debts. And now, how are they really, how can you bring that to a table of the president or the government of Zambia? You want to become bad debtors and say, please, we are closing this chapter and we end it at that. No. There are a lot of policies, there are a lot of agreements that the leaders signed. So it can begin within ourselves, but we are not very ready as we expect it, or as some people may think. We need to follow up some strategies, and the strategies now we will be following up there. These things of the African Continental Free Trade Area, but they're failing.
Well,
they're failing.
Interesting. We are due for a short commercial break and just not move a muscle, because as you can see clearly, there is so much knowledge in the studio and we don't want you to miss that. See you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Well, we will just cut the chase straight away. Collins, the looming conversation seems to be that because of our highly indebtedness, it's difficult for us to negotiate the terms that you are advocating for because you don't have the leverage. You know, I mean, the moment you raise up your voice, they say, hey, by the way, you know. So, is it possible for, okay, what do you think Africa has, as a continent, has a debt strategy? Or we are just getting money after money? Like, do you have a debt recapitalization strategy, but also eventually our strategy on how to get out of this debt eventually? Do you think African leaders are thinking that way?
Specifically, before we go to how the leaders think, I think it is 2023 when Dangote finalized with his oil refinery, and the projections are about to 21 million US dollars. Should we believe that he has no debt? Obviously, he has debt. So I think Africa, if we are to negotiate the terms on which we have these partnerships, it comes back to how the liberty or the inputs, especially from our African states, on the willingness, especially the political will. How are we willing to reduce the consumption from some of these markets? You and I will agree that the way we import is bigger than the way we export. So that is a question. And what does that need? It needs industrial development, it needs skills development among our young people, and it needs policy development. And that is sustainable development. Secondly, at the end of it all, even when these countries seem to look big or bigger on Africans, it will, again comes back. We have seen very many European countries passing resolutions on how Africa can actually help them, especially in regards to climate changes. That Africa needs to do this such that it helps the rest of the world. So it means that there is hope.
But see, you're brought in something that is actually very interesting, is that Africa is being asked to do some things to help the world. Right? So the things they're asking us to do, are those fair asks? Like, because look at how much Africa contributes towards global emissions, global carbon emissions. And now here they're asking us, putting very tough conditions, that if you produce coffee from an area where you cut a tree, it will not be accepted in the European Union, whatever market. So some of these terms and conditions, can we just boycott them or something? Just boycott and say, for us, we are going to develop, we are going to industrialize, we are going to put up, because you see, in the same week when I think the European Union put sanctions against, I think, Uganda on the crude oil pipeline, in that same particular period of time, I think USA was opening up an oil refinery in Atlanta. Like, there's just so much hypocrisy, and I think Africans, we are unable to see through this. I don't know, or even when we see through them, we lack the capacity to respond to them in equal or affordable measure. So
let me tell you something.
Because you sound like an advocate for sustainable development. These things of don't cut trees.
Obviously, it still goes back to that way. But let me tell you, it's not that Africans, we don't have the capacity. It is just that the people or the leaders have chosen to undermine simply because of selfish reasons. For example, we borrow, but what we borrow, what does it do? Okay, if we have borrowed for infrastructure development, do we believe that every amount of money that we borrow for infrastructure development goes back to infrastructure development? Obviously not. We have seen a video trending that if they are going to construct this road, this one takes this, the leader of opposition takes this, the prime minister takes this. By the time it goes to what it has been bold to do, obviously it is down. But what I am simply saying that Africans, we have the capacity. Africans, we have what it takes. Because we have seen, for example, Dangote has done it. A human being has done it in Africa. That doesn't mean that we don't have to put the other factors into account. But what I'm simply saying that as Africans, we need to have deliberate ambitions, especially in reduction on the way we consume. Because now, for example, the Gen Zs, everyone wants to have an iPhone. And why? The technology comes from these countries. So the debt that we have as Africans is not bad debt. Only that we use the debt to do bad things. For example, corruption. These unnecessary expenditures on why we borrow, on the monies that we have borrowed, is the problem. Secondly, priorities. Where are our priorities in debts? If we have borrowed money, where do we put the money? In sustaining governments. That is what our leaders are doing, which is wrong. We should be borrowing money, putting all the emphasis in making sure that our children, our youths are skilled, in making sure that there is technology advancement, in making sure that there is infrastructure development. But we are borrowing to making sure that governments are sustained in power.
Appointing other DCs.
So you will see that the problem still comes back in the way we just consume, we consume. And at the end of it all, we blame.
But not producing.
Of course.
Yeah.
We blame. We start pointing at Kenya, we start pointing at South Sudan, we start pointing at Uganda. And it is simply because that our leaders have not deliberately chosen to put the priorities of the people on the forefront. They choose to borrow to sustain their governments. And yet, for me, I believe that it is possible because we have seen people doing it, individuals. For example, we now I think have 3 refineries in Africa. That one of Dangote, the one that was in Libya and Algeria. Imagine the whole Africa. So we run for a summit and somebody says that they are going to give us 50 billion US dollars. So, should we believe that as the African states, we can't raise that? We can't support our own to develop? When it comes to policy, for example, this China issue, the Chinatown issue, do you know that the mindset of our businessmen here is different from those guys? Today, if I have a lavish, if I want to have a lavish car and I own a business, having a lavish car, having have to do parties, to do all these things, I'll bring it back to the consumer or to the customer, which is not happening in the ideologies of the businesses, especially for these Indians, for these Chinese. They don't live. We have seen them on motorbikes. On motorbikes, a China who has a business that is in billions is on a motorbike, a scooter. But for me, if I own a business, I have a business in Chikubo, I want to have a Porsche car. I want to attend every show. I want to splash money, which is literally killing the development of our country. So I think that as Africans and especially developing countries, we need to look at what do we need if we need sustainable development.
Yeah, good question. And Blessing, let me come to you and let us interrogate for a minute Uganda or Africa's economic strategy. From where I'm sitting, it looks like we are outward looking. We want to attract foreign direct investors in quotes, but forget to empower and to grow the indigenous companies here. So, and I think Dambisa Moyo makes that argument very clearly in her book, Dead Aid. She's like, you see, that donation that Africa gets from World Health Organization of, say, free nets, where does it leave the local manufacturer of the same net? Yeah, you're happy, yes, it is free, it's a grant, it's a donation, but in the long run, it is putting your domestic producer out of business, right? So I don't know, is it about time we had a general overhaul of how we are looking at our economic policies as a continent, like an overhaul, be it the structure adjustment programs, liberalization, and all these things. I don't know, how can we begin to take a step in the right direction? Blessing.
Thank you. I think our capacity, first of all, let me say Uganda, or in general Africa, we have resources. That is why the biggest number of our export to these countries are resources, materials. We do not do a lot of value addition.
Yeah.
So they take coffee very cheaply, green beans, and then they bring back coffee, Nescafe, and it is very, very expensive. So we have the raw materials. In fact, all the other continents other than Africa, they want Africa as a continent because of the raw materials that we have. We have gold, we have minerals, we have oil. And that is why they want to take the oil and it comes back when it's refined and then they sell it to us expensively. That means that is the beauty about Africa. The beauty about Africa, actually there are two things. We have our resources and we have our people. Our people give us market to a purchasing market, really. It means that all the people that are
But what's the capacity to consume is the question. Like,
of course, the capacity to consume is not based on numbers. It's also the ability,
the quality of the population.
Yes, the ability of people to purchase what you're producing. If I'm producing poor quality, which is cheap, Africa will be able to buy from us, from the other people. That is why when China is producing, it produces for Africa, it produces for Europe. The commodities, for example, if you look at a harrier that is produced for a European market and a harrier that has been produced for the African market, they're totally different, even in their functionalities, even in their pricing, because for us, we do not have a lot of money to consume particular things. So that is why they say that there are particular goods that have been produced. In fact, it's even written there, for Africa consumption, for Europe consumption, because of the quality and the quality that we take in and our capacity to purchase. One thing that stands out is that even if we said, okay, let's focus on import substitution, I want you to give me an example of a company in Uganda in itself, or in East Africa, let's widen the scope, that produces machinery, the machinery that they use for value addition. We said that we want to do value addition, but the machinery that we want to use is coming from which countries? It's coming from China, coming from Japan. Yeah, so that means that they have already deducted money that has gone for machinery. And by the time someone is producing here in Uganda, they're going to put that cost on the product that they're producing. Consistency in quality and quantity. The European market opened up our market. I'll give an example of pepper, red pepper. They said Uganda has very good fertile soils and their pepper is very good. Let's give them a particular consignment that we want on the European market. They opened up for us. We signed an agreement and we started exporting pepper. At that time, we're not even doing value addition. We're just exporting it the way it is. The first consignment, very superb. They checked everything. It was very okay. The second consignment, it went down. The third consignment, there were maggots and everything. So they banned us out of the European market. At that time, they suspended us. They brought so many people to look at the quality because for them, they're caring about the quality. Since their people might be few, but they have the capacity to consume quality products. Now, another issue, look at our stability in terms of political stability. We will say that we have capacity to consume. We say, okay, let's go to Southern Sudan. A few years back, our business people were exporting to Southern Sudan. Something happened and all their consignments and all their businesses, everything was lost. There is no way to recover these things. These business people are trying to recover their merchandise, who stole what, who did what. They lost billions and billions of money, and that was already borrowed money. Now, how do you compensate such business people? How many business people are able to say we are investing $1 million in our business so that we do value addition here in Uganda? In itself, there are very many business people. That is why for us we are MSME and SMEs. Because our capacity in terms of production, both quality and quantity. Someone who orders for avocado and says in the US, we want this amount of avocado, we want tons and tons. You say, for me, I can only struggle and produce 1 ton. I cannot go beyond that. So at the end of the day, someone made a comment and said that the policies for Uganda are actually not the worst. In fact, they are competitively the best policies that we have. Implementation of policies is a major problem. We are people in Britain, people in US, people, they are picking our policies and implementing them well, and they're excelling at it. For us, we have the best policies. We say, okay, now we're going to give incentives to domestic investors. Now, the domestic investors that we're giving incentives, guess what? They are Chinese. They are because they have locally registered a company here. When you look at the people that we're bringing in, go downtown and see the Chinese that are there selling shoes.
Actually, speaking of good laws, we have the local content bill.
We have the local content bill, and you know the local content bill actually has. We even recently passed the competition consumer bill. Consumer protection.
Yeah.
We passed that. Fortunately or unfortunately, I actually participated in contributing a few clauses and articles with that. Even the competition that is put saying that the large entities are taking advantage of the small entities to determine pricing, and they actually put strategies on how these small enterprises can be able to grow and compete favorably with the rest of the players in the market. We don't follow that. Someone does a bribe, and tomorrow there's an enterprise that is doing so well and beautifully well. What I wanted to hint on, I think he contributed to it, is the African Continental Free Trade Area. You see, I'm very passionate about that agreement. Very, very passionate because of its capacity on the impact on African continent. 52 countries already ratified. There's like Eritrea that is still struggling. Eventually it will come on board. That's 40 billion people. That's a market. A market that will buy poor quality and good quality, because Africans buy anything. There's a group that buys good quality, there's a group that buys normal quality, what they call normal quality. My challenge with that African Continental Free Trade Area is, from the time they ratified it, how many countries have officially launched and said we are taking goods out of the market? What Chinese are doing now, the reason they are coming to Uganda, the reason they went to Kenya, the reason that they are in Angola, is because they realize that if they are saying Africans should buy Africa, they are now coming to Africa, so that they are recognized as Africans. So that if I am exporting from Uganda and I'm going to Kenya, this is Africa buying for Africa. So they are trying to beat us on our game. They said, since you are buying from us directly, and now you cannot buy from us directly, they are saying now we are Africans. Our companies have been registered in Uganda as local companies.
But what is the
percentage? Is like there's one shareholder who's Ugandan, but that is a locally recognized company. It is not foreign. So when I'm exporting, the incentives that that company is going to get will be equated to the company that has fully recognition, shareholding of an African country. Now for them, they have money, they have resources, they have expertise, and they're doing mass production, taking us out of the market, but selling to other African countries in the disguise that they are Ugandans.
Yeah.
So
it's clearly these guys are thinking day and night. And Kule, I want to come to you. And Blessing mentioned something, but in passing, which was the political question, and how uncertain the political climate is in Africa, and you know, rightly so. But more than just the politics is the issue of the security dilemma. There is no multinational that would want to invest in a country where anytime they are going to go into civil war. You know, and you see, look at Africa's security question, Kule, is that you have in DRC Congo, in Goma, Eastern Congo, there are over 100 militias, some of which are domestically supported, some are foreign agents, but intentionally they've kept Congo insecure. Intentionally, because you know, when Congo is secure, then they're able to produce, they're able to get all those minerals out of the ground, and they're able to transform. But because they are conflict entrepreneurs, that conflict works for them. look at what is happening in Somalia, is that you have an African Union mission that has been in Somalia for I don't know how long, but they have just failed to deal with Al-Shabaab for some reason. And you have the USA coming in and all these things. So it looks like our security dilemma, whereas it is both internal and external, I think that it is one of the biggest hindrances to our prosperity as a continent. So how can we silence the guns? Because I think the African Union Agenda 2063 talks about silencing the guns. Is it possible that Africa is a peaceful continent and a destination for real investment?
Well, thank you for that. The issue of silencing the guns in Africa, I think it is also blended. Given that, I can give an example of how you brought in DRC, the Eastern Party. Yeah, we are really seeing how conflicting Congo is. Actually, even of recent, was it last year, when it says we are fed up with the UN, please, we are sorry, I think you came for your own mission.
Yes,
and
yes,
please,
the MONUSCO
they brought in that, but still, UN is still there. So the issue of silencing the guns in Africa,
uninvited guests, huh?
please, I don't think that is going to work, given that we still need much more from these people, and when you look at it, they blend it with the M23s, what, all those things that are coming there. Even these people that we are seeing, African countries that try to go and maybe say we are going to support or we are going to help our fellow African country, they have bad comments there. You see, DRC again with Rwanda. We have just been seeing this. But Rwanda is trying to give in a hand, but DRC said, no, we have also understood your mission, what you're after. You're similarly the same to the people we are chasing away. You're saying you're coming to help us in chasing them away. Rather, you're passing also below us and getting something out of it. So we were talking what we can basically do out of this is setting the policies and standards for ourselves as African countries. We say, if we are saying, please, let us forego any military support from maybe Europe or whatever, we do that and let a country settle itself. Given that even when another African country tries to come and say, let us negotiate on ABCD, they don't. They also do the same as how they just as the way the other European countries are doing. So you find it being difficult for an African country to sit on itself and say, we are safe and we are no longer doing this.
Actually, I saw a picture sometime where it was showing Africans at the top pointing guns at each other, whereas underground the whites are picking the gold. So they've allowed you to have access to all these guns, and they have sort of created a government that is so valuable. So all of us are now fighting to be part of a government because they've put so much money in that government that now we all want to be a part of. And they've again given you the guns. So
yeah, you just look at it as a game. What is the relevance of an African country having a backup that in case of anything, we have Russia to back us? What is the relevance of that?
The Wagner group.
Please, those are the groups you're talking about now. You already said, and you say, please, for us in case of anything, we have a backup of Russia. Because they are selling you the what? Maybe their guns, and you feel like now we are secure with what? With them.
With Russia.
But in actual sense, if we could settle ourselves, and I said it will take time in the long run, and my thought is not the same as the thought of any other person. Yeah, that is where it beats us. Our perception is totally different. He was advocating that Africa can sit on its own now, but we didn't abide by what he was saying. We said no. Right now, it is not possible. So the perception also matters so much, given that everyone thinks on his own way. But the issue of silencing guns in Africa as of now, it isn't possible.
Yeah.
Given that even as Africans, we are traitors to each other.
Yeah.
So definitely we cannot settle it as of now. It can only take time, and sitting down on a round table, we say, please, let us harmonize ourselves, not involving other maybe Western countries to come and settle us. that is the basic way we can go, and it can take time
Wow,
to
interesting.
achieve that.
Collins, the famous Berlin conference that sat down and said there's a dark continent somewhere that we have to go and petition, all right? And so many years down the road, that actually came to pass. Those guys sat there, agreed, and they came and raided the continent, petitioned it in whichever ways that they wanted, and took what they could take. Is there a new scramble for Africa? Because if you look at China, it will call African leaders. Putin did the same. Joe Biden did the same. There is a new scramble that we are not seeing.
Yes, obviously, and the worst thing is that the scramble that is happening now is more economical. So
Yeah.
it would be an economical scramble for African states. But like, I don't know why I'm so hopeful and as positive about for us as Africans is that some of these problems that we are having, they are questions of the political will that leaders have chosen to undermine. If we look at, for example, the political instabilities that we are having, it's a question of this president has interest in, even when we still think that's why we still believe that the only court that we can run to is the Europeans. So if we feel like we have a problem, an economical problem, we have to run there. If we have a political problem, we have to run there. If we have a social, maybe a cultural problem, we have to run there. And where we run to is the question of them saying, okay, if you are running to us, it means we are very important to you. So the issue of the economic scramble, or the scramble that we are having here in Africa, is specifically economic. And to me, I believe that if we have chosen to go by what they are saying, if they are saying that we have come, Uganda, we need to help you, do an eco project for you, and then we are going to give you 15%, and then we have to come and then possibly support your project on education, and then we have to come and help your girl child. For me, I simply believe that this is something that is small, but because our leaders think that they need to protect themselves, they have to abide. For example, if somebody says, I am going to do this, and in the end, I am going to do for you this, we have seen them bringing projects. We have seen countries like Japan, the cooperations that we are having with China, with France, with the other countries. They are saying we are going to come and promote this, but at the end of it all, maybe we are going to help you develop education. We have seen all that. But the question that I have with African states, and especially our leaders, is that why is it that we can't do some of the things ourselves? Why? We have the backbone of our cultures. So why do we have to first allow the other culture to come and put questions on our culture? Yet some of these things we are literally benchmarked in the beginning. For example, what stops me from trading with Kenya? What stops me from having and it's good that the governments, especially in East Africa here, they are trying to look ahead on that. They are trying to say, okay, Kiswahili, Tanzania, Kiswahili, Kenya, Kiswahili, Uganda, why not Kiswahili? So I think those are all efforts that are happening to making sure that we do away with the other scramble, to do away with this security scramble, to do away from running to them. So the question is now the will. How are we willing, and at what pace? Yeah. Because the world is not remaining with us. If we come to the issue of internet, are we producers or we are consumers? What in the phase of technology, where do we participate as Africans?
We are consumers, of course.
We are consumers. But simply what they are trading our culture, they are trading our economic tourism, all that is being traded and taken. So that is the scramble that we are having in Africa. So for me, I believe that there are steps that are being taken, even when it is on a very slow pace. And it is simply because of the egoism that we have with these leaders. But I can believe that if we had the Nyerere, if we had in these times, if you had those Nyereres, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Magufulis, we would be very, very at a very faster rate. So I believe that the consumptions or the scrambles that we are all having, especially with these small conferences that they take us to, is that we need to understand that as Africa, because the world is already running, and we cannot deny that we don't need them.
Sure.
So, but what are our priorities as Africans?
Good question.
Yes.
I think let me end with blessing, and that is on the question of which way for Africa, because Russia put on table its deal, USA put on table its deal, and now China has put on table its deal, with different, of course, conditions. Which deal is, of the so many bad deals, which is the least bad? Or I mean, where does at least Africa find itself leaning towards a bit?
I think for you to appreciate, of course, which deal is better is to look internally and look at the conditions that have been set. A deal on the onset might look like it's a better deal because there's not a lot that has been explained, which conditions have been put, both on document and even verbally, because there's an engagement that goes on and the discussions and partnerships. I think the most important part that Africa needs to recognize and needs to put out there is Africa is a partner. You're not donating to it. There's something that they're bringing to the table. I like this when people ask, what do you bring to the table? Yeah. Africa is bringing something to the table. These countries might not exist without Africa, I'm telling you. Every production that is being done now, every resource is being obtained from Africa. An African country has gold, an African country has oil, an African country has coffee, an African country. Like they'll tell you, Ethiopia is competing with Brazil in coffee. Uganda is not very far away from them. They'll tell you that now Uganda has discovered oil, but there are countries that they went and damaged, like Libya, that had the biggest production of oil in Africa. They'll tell you that the reason why China is in Angola is because Angola has its oil. They'll tell you that the reason why British is in Namibia is because Namibia has oil. The reason why Congo is not stable is because Congo has minerals. There's a component that these continents do not have that Africa has. That is number one. Number two is that all these continents are trying so hard to import in Africa. Why? Because Africa has one of the highest consumption rates. Even if they're saying that they're producing for Africa, the African commodities, they're still selling. In a case in point is Uganda, 43 now million young people. That is almost highly subsidized labor for their production, but also in consumption, they will still consume so many goods. He has just mentioned that there are very many young people who want to buy iPhone. iPhone has just gone out, I think, is it yesterday or yesterday, but
16,
one.
yes.
I am telling you that there are Africans who have already ordered to buy even that iPhone. So we have two things that we are bringing on the table, and that's something that we should leverage on.
Okay, Blessing, I don't know if you have enough time, but I would love to interrogate you more on that, because I don't think we are bringing anything to the table by us being consumers.
If I am a business person, the king is not the business person. The king is the customer. If I produce, for example, tons and tons, I want to give a very good example of these shoes that they produce. Plastic shoes. And there's no one purchasing those plastic shoes. Where would they go? Where would they recover their money? We might be buying low quality, but we buy in mass production. What we are consuming, Africa in general has more than 40 billion people. that is a ready market. Otherwise, they wouldn't say that Asia in itself is bringing 16% of their import to Africa. They wouldn't say that China in itself is bringing 20% of its import to Africa. Because for them, first of all, their policies on production of children in itself reduce their amount of consumption at that level. They might buy high quality things, but for them to make money, the concept, and just in a short while, I know time has gone, but the concept of consumption in Chinese and Indian, I just want to go through that a little bit, a small little bit. For them, they would rather sell with a very small profit, but sell mass sales, because you make more profit with that concept. It is not like Uganda where I say my dress is 150,000. I'm not going to reduce it when you're making a profit of 50,000. There's a Chinese whose dress was 150 and he's making a profit of 2,000 and he still reduces that 1,000 to just make 1,000. That is the concept of Chinese and Indians. That is why they are making a lot of money in Africa, because for them they're in mass sale, mass production and mass sale, and they're making a lot of money from it. So it is not entirely true that we're not bringing anything on the table. In fact, it's actually very true that we're bringing a lot on the table, because the material that they're getting cheaply is the reason why they are rich. They're bringing it back very expensively with the value addition. So what does this communicate to the governments of Africa? And in general, of course, business people. Sometimes business people, their hands are tied. They can't do so much. But there's need for us to do value addition. Value addition, so that whatever we are taking, we can make a profit out of it. If they're taking green beans, what about us also doing value addition? We produce our coffee, we produce our tea, we produce our tea, so that when we're exporting, we're exporting a final concept good that can be consumed.
Yeah.
What about if we said that, for example, the gold that has to first go to another country to be refined, then brought back and expensively, buy what's very expensive, but the people that are taking that gold, they're buying it cheaply. What about us saying, now let's focus on doing value addition on our gold, so that when you're buying my golden watch, it is made from Congo? How about we support each other? Like African countries should just learn to support themselves. You know, if you cannot produce milk, how about you let Uganda supply your milk? Because eventually, if the current president made a comment, he said that let them bring their milk anyway. They're bringing it when it is just normal milk, so we'll do value addition and still sell it to them. If that is the attitude you're bringing to African market, how are Africans going to grow? You need to know that Africa in general, he has made a very good point of saying that if Africa came together, it's a force that you cannot reckon with. They can get the money that they need to get. They can get all the supplies that they need to get, and they can get all the market they need to get. The problem is, it is each African country on its own against the rest of the African countries. So when I am negotiating in China as a Ugandan president, I'm negotiating on behalf of Ugandans. I'm not saying that us as Africa, we have our materials. If we are giving you those materials, then you're supposed to give us these are our conditions. Because if you are bringing something on the table and you've come as 52 countries, there is no way China is not going to hear you out and give you conducive environment that has good conditions. But if Uganda is coming alone, no, for us we have our coffee, you take our coffee, then give us money. Then Congo says, no, for us we have our gold here, it is here, take it. If you're just coming, it's divide and conquer. These countries have learned to divide Africa and conquer them. But if Africans, there's Kwame Nkrumah, I think, who said that he's looking for a vision where there's a United States of Africa, where people do things, they reason together, they put their conditions together as Africa, and then the other countries or continents can replicate their conditions, but when they're negotiating with the whole continent, and not just Uganda in particular.
Wow, interesting. The principle of collective bargain. Guys, our time is fast spent. We need to be out of this place. I'll just give you each 30 seconds to look to the camera and give us your parting shots. I'll begin with Kule as I move towards Collins. Just 30 seconds.
All right, thank you so much. And in this very discussion, I think it is now a game of value addition versus local consumption. If we definitely add value to our products, why not? We shall get the market and we shall not be thinking of the China, the Japan, and everything. Just value addition, and we shall be in position to achieve the market that we really want. Thank you.
Interesting. Yes, Collins?
Yes, thank you very much. I am very honored to be here. But to me, the Africa that we want is the Africa that has sustainable development. And when I talk about sustainable development, that means we have to have priorities. We have to have priorities in technology. We have to have priorities in industrial development. We have to have priorities in empowering our young people with skills, especially the political leaders. If we do not have the will for the political leaders, we are not going to heal from the diseases that are happening in Africa, the political instabilities that are happening in Africa, the large debts that are happening in Africa. But most importantly, to reduce on the levels of consumption that we are having from these other states. I thank you so much.
Yes, Blessing, you have the final words.
Thank you so much for saying I had a good time. That my last bit is that COVID-19 actually showed us a very unique component of Africa. Africans did not die. Means that there's good climate.
Yeah.
While people were struggling in hospitals and doing this, Africans were strong. There were few people that died, yes, but Africans did not die. The climate, the resources, the ability to grow. We have capacity. We've utilized our capacity on just 20%. That means 80% is remaining. Someone made a statement and said that if you want an African not appreciate what you are telling them, put it in writing. These people are signing agreements that we do not know, conditions that they're setting for our future children that we have not appreciated. Let's take time and read before anything happens. Let's read the conditions. Let's do so much. But in the bit of every aspect of an African person, what are you doing different for our nation that you want to see in the near future? It's okay for us to say government this, but in our different spaces of work, in our different circles, let us do something that will change the thought and the ambience and the space that the Africans are at now. If you're in business, let's do value addition. If you're doing curricular, if you're teaching in education, teach a child something that they will be able to benefit from, more than just teaching, the parts of a cockroach, the parts of a mosquito, because they are not that important. We are the Africa that we want to see tomorrow. So whatever you plant now is what you will see tomorrow. Yes, thank you.
Wow, interesting. What a way to bring the show to an end. Thank you, Collins. Thank you, Blessing, and thank you, Kule, for your time. Of course, the show has come to an end, but let me just give you some brief facts as we wrap it up. Is that Africa is home to over 30% of the world's minerals, home to over 15% of the world's natural gas, but also home to the youngest population in the world. That population, if transformed into a productive means of production, oh my God, Africa can be, the next superpower. And it is possible. We simply have to do the right things, and we shall get there. The producers, thank you for ensuring that this show airs right on time at 2 p.m. Until next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.